Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this webinar on MOOCs. Yes, they really can work. I'm Alan Song, the moderator for this webinar, and currently serving as part of the ASCILITE executive and organizing this series of webinars this year. I also like to introduce my fellow ASCILITE executives, Mark Northover, who is also part of the ASCILITE webinar team. This afternoon, we are very glad to have Peter Mellow and Susan Batur to facilitate this one-hour webinar on MOOCs. Peter Mellow is the Learning Design Coordinator in Learning Environments at the University of Melbourne. Previously, he was a senior lecturer teaching sports science at Auckland University of Technology for 22 years. In 2007, he received a National Tertiary Teaching Excellence Award in New Zealand. He has also worked at Curtin University as an e-learning advisor. In 2013, Peter contributed to setting up the University of Melbourne's MOOCS program. This work continued in 2014 with a rerun of the previous year's MOOCs and the introduction of several new courses. Susan Batur is a learning designer at the University of Melbourne. She joined the university in late 2013 to assist in the designing, developing, and evaluating the growing number of MOOCs being offered by the university. Aside from working on MOOCs, Susan coordinates the Practical Pedagogy series, a series of monthly workshops designed to showcase developments in teaching and learning with technology. Prior to joining the university, Susan has worked mostly within postgraduate medical education, having held positions at various medical specialty colleges within Victoria. For this afternoon's one-hour webinar, the presenters will share for about 30 minutes with some time for activities, and thereafter there will be time for discussion. If you have any questions during the session, please feel free to post your questions in the chat box. And during the Q&A session, you can also click onto the hand-raising button located on the left, right below the image box, and I'll give you the right to speak. And when speaking, you can click onto the talk button, and after speaking, you can release the button. So without further ado, please help me to welcome Peter and Susan.
Great. Thanks very much for the introduction, Alan, and thank you to ASCILITE for the opportunity to speak. My name is Peter Mellow, and as Alan mentioned, I'm the Learning Design Coordinator at Learning Environments at the University of Melbourne, a position I've had for just coming up to 3 years. I started November 2012. 2 years before that, I was working at Curtin University under the leadership of Tony Harrington with some wonderful colleagues, Jackie and Kim and Judy, who are meant to be here today, but running on West Australian time, obviously, and going to be a few minutes late. And before that, as Alan mentioned, I worked at AUT University alongside the wonderful Mark Northover, who's in the room here today, and Stanley Frederick. So here's what we've planned today. We've got approximately 33 slides, so aiming for a slide a minute, so just over half an hour of talking, and that'll hopefully leave us with 25-30 minutes for questions and discussion. I'll kick off the session giving my perspective on MOOCs that I've grown over the last 2 or 3 years, and also a little bit of demographics from the University of Melbourne MOOCs and a few lessons learned from my perspective. Susan brings a really interesting perspective because I did the first year of Melbourne MOOCs on my own virtually, and so Susan came in near the end of the first year and helped me out with the last 3, and then in the second year we split the MOOCs 50-50, so we were project manager and learning designer for an equal number of MOOCs, and then we moved on to this team approach that I'll mention in my slides. So I'll get started and try to advance these slides. If you have any questions, please feel free to post them in the text box, as Alan mentioned, or also just start talking to us. We don't mind stopping at any time so I can gather my breath. All right, a few resources. Up front, I've uploaded this. The first 2 slides are just uploaded with a few URLs and resources and some blatant advertising from the University of Melbourne. On the right-hand side is a MOOC meme that I've put together on Pinterest with some very funny photos and cartoons about MOOCs that you might get some pleasure out of. More seriously, hi Judy. On the left-hand side, more seriously, are our Learning with MOOCs Scoop It from the Learning Environments team at the University of Melbourne. Scoop It's a digital curation site that I started with actually Kim Flintoff over at Curtin, along with Judy and Jackie, introduced me to Scoop It, and yeah, we've carried that tradition forward here at Melbourne, and we just find it really useful as a central, almost like a literature search of the informal literature around MOOCs and current fingers on the pulse. And of course the MOOC hashtag in Twitter is always very useful to get the latest thoughts and ideas around it as well. A couple of other resources from the University of Melbourne you might want to look at. The top one is the 2013-2014 MOOC report. That's a public report, so you can download that and have a look at those. And if you do have some time to listen a little bit further from an academic perspective, Professor Peter McPhee, mastermind of the Melbourne model and first provost of the university here, has a recorded lecture about his experience during the French Revolution, which is quite unique because when Peter originally undertook the MOOC, he wasn't a great fan of online learning, and especially at the end of the 1-hour presentation that's mentioned there at the Vimeo URL, he actually has some compelling arguments and evidence of how online learning could be used at a face-to-face university as well. Anyway, that's blatant upfront advertising. Let's get into it. MOOCs have been represented many ways. Quite often we see the wonderful 1950s and 1960s science fiction posters, the Blob, and MOOC, this big thing that's taken over education. But I've come to the conclusion that MOOCs are like a hydra, a multi-headed beast. And the reason why I say this is in mythology, of course, when you cut off one of the heads of the hydra, another head comes to life. And of course, MOOCs came with a lot of promises. They were going to educate the world for free, and they would revolutionize and democratize education in Africa. Of course, this didn't happen in the first 2 or 3 years due to technological limitations in Africa. But of course, other things came up. And I think what it is, I think the MOOC has got such an entity and such a critical mass of its own that it's morphing and evolving. And so, you know, I don't think it's something that's going to die or go away. I think it's going to evolve over the next few years. I put this in as a bit tongue-in-cheek, of course, because, you know, there are people within universities around the world who feel threatened by MOOCs for a number of reasons. And so, you know, do we want to kill the MOOC off, or do we want to use it to our benefit? I think, to me, and this is one thing Gregor Kennedy always says in presentations he does about MOOCs, is why is Melbourne doing MOOCs? And of course there are multiple reasons. It's multifactorial. You know, research potential, potential pipeline for future students. But the number one reason has always been and is always quoted, is we want to give a taste of a quality University of Melbourne education to the world. And I think it's very altruistic and idealistic, and part of all universities' community engagement programs. So it's wonderful that we finally have a model for free education. I think it's quite exciting. And I think it's also exciting and in the e-learning world that it's, you know, one of the O's of MOOCs is open, and it's part of this open educational resource movement that we see. So yeah, that's my perspective on MOOCs at the moment. I'm sure it will evolve as well. Just a free slide to talk about where our journey was in Melbourne and where it's come from and where it's going to. So I came on board, as I mentioned, 2012 from Curtin. And I must admit I was pretty sceptical about MOOCs at that time. Kim Flintoff had started the Curtin Scoop It about MOOCs, but I was, you know, very hesitant. But I quickly came to realise and love MOOCs, and I suppose I'm a bit of a MOOC advocate now. I did an edX workshop early 2013, and one of the edX presenters talked about when you're dealing with MOOCs, you're talking about MOOC years, or a bit like dog years. One normal year is equal to 7 years in the MOOC world. So with 3 years of MOOCs under my belt now, I think I've been here 21 years. So that's quite interesting. So as you can see, we caught 2013, the first MOOC, the top one, Principle of Macroeconomics by Nils Ollerkans. We caught it right at the peak of the MOOC tsunami, where the MOOC word was very popular. And the macroeconomics also was our largest class. As you can see there, 76,000 participants. Now, of course, you know this as well as I do. You've read this in the research now. Whenever you see a number quoted for enrollments, only 50% of the students will turn up on the first day. So, you know, all of these numbers are actually halved by actual participants in the course. But the interesting thing is they have enrolled in a University of Melbourne course, and that bit of connection is really important for us, that we're getting our name out there. So part of it's PR and marketing as well. So the big year was 2013 for us. 7 courses, and of course Susan came on board near the end of that and helped me out with the last courses of that year, which were climate change, Susan, and I think it was epigenetics. So then 2014, he says trying to advance the slide, 2014 we kept the original 7. We dropped macro for 1 year because of some copyright challenges, and we introduced 4 new courses. We were meant to introduce another 3 courses, but they had unique challenges. Challenges dealing with the academics and timelines, and academics of course are very busy people with research and teaching, and so quite often the priority for MOOCs for them slid off the back burner a bit, and they didn't always meet the deadlines and expected dates that we set them. So that's okay, we just kept on carrying it over. But we did see growth, but of course we also saw, if we had those 70,000 students from macroeconomics, we would have been hitting the same 350,000 that we had in the first year. But of course we're then spreading it over more classes. So we're getting a dilution effect over time. And then this year we had significant growth where we ran 6 of the original 7. We ran 4 of the second year's set. We added another 6 and also a specialization, which was once part of this evolution of MOOCs that I see coming about. So this year, 20 courses plus a capstone. And the capstone is our last course, which is starting next Monday. And we'll have met these goals. That's quite exciting. So just a quick little snapshot, I suppose, the maturing, what I call the maturing of the MOOCs. Now, of course, I don't know what 2016 is going to bring, but one thing we have talked about here, and Gregor Kennedy mentions this, we've probably reached a stable figure for us of around 21 to 25 courses. And we probably will maintain it around there, with 2 or 3 courses being retired every 2 to 3 years. There is an expectation when you start a MOOC course at the University of Melbourne that you will run it for at least 2 to 3 years. And then, as maybe academics and students lose interest, some of the smaller ones will drop off, and a couple of new ones will be nurtured on. We do have 2 new ones in planning. We have music therapy next year and moving your business to the cloud. So that's quite exciting. But I think the main thing for me is the average class size number. And the 2 to 3 lifespan is just something we've just taken a ballpark figure for Melbourne at the moment, but if people are interested in going further than that, they're welcome to. I suppose the main thing is we want instructors and lecturers in the MOOC courses who are actively contributing to the course, not just creating it up front and then letting it run by itself. We'd like to actually have some contributions there. Now this is you're probably just like me, leaning back from the screen right now saying, whoa, what's this slide here? I had this brainwave coming in on the train this morning with the Mikey card that Judy got me 2 years ago that I still have. Judy, thank you very much. I suppose it's my perspective of how complex designing a MOOC is. And for those of us involved in e-learning for the last 10 to 15 years at least, quite often as an e-learning advisor, as a flexible learning advisor, depending on what handle, thank you Judy, depending on what handle they give you at your institution, quite often we work one-on-one with academics. And I love that one-on-one. I think it's very personal, and it recognises the knowledge that we have about e-learning and the academic knowledge that the academics bring to the team. But increasingly at Melbourne, we're scaling, and not just scaling for the MOOCs, we're scaling for our masters courses that are online, the graduate online program that Susan is working on at the moment. And also, of course, we're dealing with growth in face-to-face courses as well as online. And so increasingly we're moving our e-learning teams towards a team approach. And this shows you how complex the team is. When I designed this, every colour and every shape actually have a reason why I've done that, and I'll try to explain it. Obviously the students are front and centre and up top. And they are, our customers, but they are also the people we are sharing our education with, and I think it's wonderful that we can do that. And of course the MOOC is the instrument that facilitates the interaction with the students. And so everyone contributes to the MOOC. The learning design team, so if you look at that learning design team with project management, ed technologists and quality assurance, well, that team was just one person in 2013, me. and then Susan came on at the end of 2013. So 2014, that team was 2. This year it's 4. We've finally got a dedicated project manager, which helps, and we've got an educational technologist on secondment from Glow, which is great. But of course, we can't do everything, and so on the left-hand side we've got video and media production. I'm the first to admit, and you're welcome to come and look at the University of Melbourne MOOCs, I think it's one of the gifts that MOOCs have given the world, is that we can actually go into another person's course and look at their pedagogy. And I'm the first to admit, University of Melbourne courses are very conservative, very traditional e-learning, very vanilla. Partially this is due to the lack of maturity, well, not lack of maturity, but reduced maturity in the platform. Of course, Coursera is a wonderful partner to deal with. In fact, this morning we found some research around our Sexing the Canvas MOOC that over 90% of students found out about the course through the Coursera website. So if we hadn't partnered with Coursera, we could never have brought the number of students in and shared the experience with them. I've always said, and Kim and I used to say this at Curtin, is that you know, nothing magical about a MOOC. You could do a MOOC in Blackboard, you could do a MOOC in Moodle, and of course people are. You know, you do need some sort of learning management system, and of course Coursera is a very primitive learning management system. I always say it reminds me of where Blackboard was in about 2002. But I'm also the first to say an LMS is an LMS is an LMS. It's not the tool you use, it's how you use the tool. It's how you design the learning activities. It's how you design the assessment activities. And so there are restrictions in the platform. On a continuum, on the MOOC continuum of XMOOCs on the left-hand side, and XMOOCs being the broadcast-style MOOCs, heavily embedded in video, to the CMOOC on the right-hand side, the constructivism MOOC, which is more crowdsourcing and the students are doing more peer-to-peer learning. You know, we are heavily on the left-hand side towards X at the moment. But we are trying to put in more interactive activities and get students to do self-directed learning. So our video and media production team is on the left-hand side. They're very important partners for us. On the right-hand side, equal partners is the library, who give us copyright advice, and subject specialists. They design library guides with open source resources for the students about the subjects. And just more recently, the map librarian, the map curator at University of Melbourne Library, gave us 2 beautiful maps. So having that expertise is wonderful. Now, the University of Melbourne logo is spread in 3 places, and this is to represent the 3 parts of university service: community service, teaching and research. I think it would be very selfish for MOOCs in an institution to just think of it. And remember that at Melbourne, MOOCs were originally a project, and now they're part of our core business. It would be very selfish for the MOOC team to think we're just delivering MOOCs for the world. While that's a wonderful thing, I think it's very wasteful. We're learning a lot of lessons. We're learning things. Sorry, my computer just went to sleep. I thought I'd lost power. We're learning a lot of things, and it's really exciting to be able to share this with the university. I'm the first to admit we're not disseminating the information to the face-to-face lecturers and the blended lecturers as much as we would like to, but we're planning on doing a better job of that next year. So on the left-hand side, we've got lessons learned, sharing and informing practice within the university. One thing that has come up at the university has been a big interest in flipped classroom, and we believe this is mainly from the MOOC movement, so large that in fact we have now 2 self-service studios where lecturers can take their PowerPoint slides in and sit down at a nice professional high quality camera, record the video and then embed it into Blackboard course, but also we're now opening a 3rd one. So video has really taken off, which is great.
Yeah, Peter, we have 2 questions here. The first question is actually talking about the cost with regard to the production, media production, and do you use the resources to develop MOOCs for face-to-face courses? There's a question by Ashwini. And the other question is from Caroline on the chat. Do you have any stats on who is enrolling, for example, gender, country, education, socioeconomic background, completion of rates, outcomes of University of Melbourne? For example, students who go to enroll in University of Melbourne paid courses. Yeah. So there are 2 questions here.
Okay, I'll answer the first question, which was about... I did have it on the left-hand side. So the first question was regarding...
Media production costs.
Media production. Yeah. All right. Yes, so we do have a guideline, a very strong guideline, that any of the media produced for the MOOCs is available for face-to-face students as well, if the lecturer deems it appropriate to put into their Blackboard courses, and a number of lecturers have done that. And of course, I think the style of the videos we have produced are also influencing the style of the videos being produced for face-to-face courses alone, as a standalone. The second thing about the demographics, yes, we have obviously very dense demographics. The nice thing about Coursera is that it gives us a click stream. It tracks every student's journey through the MOOC. So when they click in, how long they spend on every page, what page they go to next, what activities they do. If they're watching a video, do they watch the video to the end? Do they watch the video halfway through? This very rich data is downloadable. We have a statistician who works on this. And for example, the macroeconomics MOOC, a CSV file, when we downloaded the data file, was 13 gigabytes of data. So of course, it takes a lot of analysis. So bottom right-hand corner, you see the Learning Analytics Research Group. We have a group called LARG, L-A-R-G, Learning Analytics Research Group, and they've published a number of papers already from the rich research that we have. As for demographics of the students, this varies course to course. Predominantly it's generally slightly more males than females, but it's really exciting in our Sexing the Canvas MOOC about gender and art that started on Monday, that it's the first course we've got that's 70% female, which is really exciting. Age groups do change, primarily in the 20 to 40 band seems to be the largest population, but once again, the aging population course we ran earlier this year did have a significant number of people over 60 and 65, so that was quite exciting as well. Just to finish off my explanation, I hope that helps, but also a lot of that demographic stuff is available from research around the world, and we find what's published in other countries tends to reflect our courses as well.
Yeah, Peter, there's another question. The two persons will ask the same question in regard to how do you select the pedagogical approaches given the platform's immaturity at this stage?
Sure. Well, we've had to rely on some pretty basic stuff. We try obviously to embed most of our thought around social constructivism and some connectivism through social channels if we can. But yes, there are limitations, and that's, as I've said, and make no apology for. And it's not just the platform. There's a number of other issues as well, which we could talk about. But our approach in our courses is very conservative, very vanilla. But I think the main thing is I'd like to think it's very clear. We've had a lot of feedback from students that navigation in the course is very clear in our courses compared to others, has less clutter, and Thoreau said we surround ourselves with clutter, simplify, simplify, simplify. And I firmly believe that as one of my philosophies for e-learning. So I hope that answers that question. Just to finish off on this slide and keep moving along, just down the bottom is the academic team, obviously the academic rock stars, and MOOCs have made academics rock stars, and rightfully so. They deserve all the accolades. They deserve the recognition they're finally getting, that they've well deserved for all the work they've done. Of course, research assistants and teaching assistants are there as well. And top right-hand side is strategic guidance. People like Gregor Kennedy, a Professor of Innovation here at the university, and of course our leader at Learning Environments, Deb Jones, Associate Director. So it really is a team approach, and the reason why I've got the arrows going both ways is I think this is a really interesting phenomenon. As the learning design team, yes, we are central for managing the MOOCs, but I don't think we have sole right on the design and the pedagogy of the course. We obviously liaise very closely with the academic team and the lecturer who's taking the course, because they've taught the students in a similar subject and they know the subject inside out, so they should have a better idea of how the course is best taught. But we have had pedagogical input from the library, from the video team as well, and we also like to consider how do things like video impact on the pedagogy. So we're going to talk about that a little bit further on now. Just trying to keep the time. Okay, so one of the interesting things is specialization. This is the evolution that's happened in the last year. So rather than run standalone courses, we've partnered with an external partner, a commercial bank in America, Bank of New York Mellon, and we have 4 standalone courses and a capstone project, which is quite exciting. and we're finding this very successful. We've had another partnership with the National Gallery of Victoria, the MoMA Gallery, Museum of Modern Art in New York, and the Huntington Gallery in Monterey, in California, for the Sexting the Canvas. And I believe that this cooperation and collaboration will extend to other institutions. We already see this. The discrete optimization course is being converted into Mandarin right now, and it's going to be taught by a staff member at Hong Kong University. So it's great to see more cooperation and collaboration, something universities have always given importance to in research, but now also in teaching. Just quickly, the process that we go through there in text, and some of, a screenshot of one of our lecturers talking about discrete optimization. And I suppose the reason why I put that in there, and the next one of Raoul down at the lake talking about the swans, and also these next two slides here, is it's about people. We talk about learning, and we talk about learning artifacts and knowledge and content, but it's about people connecting with people. And the great thing is video is very powerful for that. You can get that gaze where the lecturer, students have reported, I feel like the lecturer is talking directly to me. Even though they know it's a one-to-many situation, they feel the power of good quality video. So here are my lessons learned, and I'm going to hand over to Susan in 2 slides' time. I know she's chomping at the bit. She's prodding me with private messages right now. Here are my lessons. The first one is learning design has got to come first. I came on board where some of the video had been timetabled before the learning design had gone into place. And as I said, trying to retrofit learning design into an already created material is not effective or satisfying. Streamline the workflows. We've gone through many iterations to get what we think is a streamlined workflow, especially in things like copyright, because the email circle would just go on forever. When it comes to video, my new catch cry is less is more. I think it's really important. Video is so powerful that if you use it all the time, you come desensitized to it. And it has to be used like good seasoning in food. So less is more there. And I didn't highlight it, but that last sentence in that bullet point is really important for me. We're now having discussions about what a MOOC Video 2.0 going to look like. Because currently we've got talking heads in PowerPoint, and frankly we want to move away from that if we can. Well-directed learning activities, self-directed learning activities, I've mentioned there, formative opportunities. If you're going to go to the problem of writing a quiz, for God's sake, give students feedback. Students just love getting feedback on not just the correctness of their answer, but also further directions for study. And when it comes to assessment, transparency is the key. And this is my last 3 slides really quickly. This is from Edinburgh's MOOC handbook. And I'll put the URL where you can get it's an open educational resource. And you'll notice I put a blue line where they go live. Love this diagram, beautiful and complex, and well worth exploring in high definition. This is my version of it. As you can see, I'm not very aesthetic, I'm very linear, but you can see the line again where the course launches. And I've now simplified that model to this, and this is my last slide, where yes, planning and production is crucial. Planning and production is so important. To go into a MOOC without a plan and having produced 99% of it is danger. But the main thing to me is the learning, and moving that blue line to the left so that we're doing more right of centre. We're spending more time in the learning activities. And that means getting the teaching staff involved. There's a number of teaching staff around the world have reported this. I've now finished filming my last MOOC video. My MOOC is now built. And kind of rub their hands and walk away. And to me, I think the learning experience is not as satisfying, and students report that. When students get a few posts from a lecturer once a week or twice a week, or from a teaching assistant, they respond, and it really helps create that community. So, Susan, I'm going to have a rest now and have a drink of water and hand it over to you.
Okay, thanks very much, Peter. I hope everyone can hear me. I think there's a question, though, before I start about, there it is from Caroline in the discussion forum. Do you want to respond to that, Peter, before I get going?
I can respond to it in the discussion forum. You get going and I'll type an answer now.
Okay, sure. Okay, so thanks for that, Peter, and I hope you're all still with us. I've got a couple of poll questions just to make sure you are in a couple of slides' time. But basically, I'm going to talk a little bit about the pedagogy and what we've learned about the some of the activities that we've designed in the MOOCs and how we're taking some of those lessons and applying them to not only the face-to-face courses, but some of the online master's programs that we're currently developing, the wholly online graduate online program that I'm currently working on. So we're going to start with talking about video and video for educational purposes, because those of you that are familiar with MOOCs will know that that a lot of the MOOC content is delivered by video, and video has a very strong presence in MOOCs. We're going to talk a little bit about the weekly mailbags and how they've been a really great little tool to use to engage students and just how much they like them. We're going to talk about MOOCS Alumni, and I don't know if alumni is the right word, but that's what Peter and I, that's the term we use to refer to them. And so they're the students that that we continue to engage with well after the MOOC that they've enrolled in is over. And mention a little bit about the LibGuides that we've developed. I'll touch on assessment and then talk about student feedback. So as I mentioned, the video is very much a dominant feature in our MOOCs, certainly, and in many of the MOOCs that we've taken. And as leading designers of MOOCs, we've enrolled in a lot of other MOOCs just to see what other people are doing and to get ideas as well. Actually, just on the topic of enrolment, I might bring up the first polling question. So first of all, if you could use there's a little tick and cross button just above the chat box, and the tick to indicate yes that you've been previously enrolled in a MOOC. So we're not asking for completion, just if you've ever gone to a MOOC page and said, yep, I think I'll do that, and ticked on the enroll button. Yep, so good to see that most people have. I don't think there's anyone here that hasn't. No? Okay, good. So then, do you want to type in the chat box and tell us how many MOOCs? Yeah, that's right, we've got a room full of MOOCs. How many MOOCs you've enrolled in? I'll type in the chat box as well. Lost count, Peter. 2, at least 6, half a dozen, 10 plus. Can't remember. 8 to 9, okay, very good. Lots non-completed. Oh, that's the next question, Lenka. So how many have you completed? None. One. Oh, Peter, 1, that's terrible. Travis, I've completed so many, you know, what's that? And then, yeah, okay, so that's good. It's good to see that we're pretty consistent with what the literature says, at least, about MOOCs and completion rates. And then the last poll question here is, are MOOCs being offered by the institution that you work at? Yes. Yep, okay, good number. Do you want to, for those of you that have said yes, do you want to just let us know which institution it is that you're at? Travis. CSU, UniMel, QUT. Okay, thanks for that. So good to see that most of you are obviously very, very familiar with MOOCs. Okay, so as I mentioned, the MOOCs video is very, very dominant in the MOOCs, and I've chosen these 2 images to show the type of video that is most prevalent across the MOOCs, and certainly for the MOOCs that we have at the University of Melbourne. So the first is the talking head, as we refer to it, and it's usually somebody talking to a set of PowerPoint slides, much like I am now. The university has also invested in something called a Wacom tablet, so that the academics are able to annotate the slides as they're talking to them. So that's kind of, I'd say that 95% of our videos feature the talking head and maybe some annotation. I've included a great a little paper here that I'll refer to throughout my presentation, but I highly recommend you download it. It's free to download. It was produced by people at, where is my little list there? The Alexander von Humboldt Institute. So they reviewed, I think, 30+ MOOCs and wrote a paper on the different video styles and what they've learned from that. So have a look. So as I mentioned, the talking head is pretty much one that's favoured by academics, and then we've got the Khan style tablet capture, which is that annotation that we talked about. And it's really surprising to us that despite all these other options being available, to the academics, they continually go for this talking head or the annotation tool. So we try and, where possible, encourage academics to move away from the PowerPoint style and to think about a variety of ways of presenting content. I guess they tend to go to the PowerPoint style because it's comfortable for them, it's easy, it's the way that they're used to presenting information. Obviously going out to a location and doing
we'll be going past at 7 AM because John has a breakfast at 7:30 at work.
Oh, sorry, I can hear somebody's microphone. I'll just mute that one. So obviously going out on location requires a lot of, it's logistically a difficult thing. It's expensive. It takes a lot of time and organisation. Going into the studio or the studio is obviously a much easier option. So we understand that. But where possible, we try and encourage academics to go out and try and do something different, or to have a conversation style piece or an interview. Or any of the options here. So I often use this in my discussions with academics and find that it's a really useful tool to use. So the thing that we most say to academics, I guess, when we're talking about video and how they're using video is, do you actually need video here? Is there something else that we can use? Are there other open educational resources or a case study or something that doesn't necessarily have to be video? And we know from students that come from countries where the internet connection isn't very good, or where they have limitations on how much they can stream or download, that having a lot of video isn't actually necessarily a good thing and can put a lot of people off actually participating in the MOOC. And we also try and ask them to consider, what is the best use of the medium and how are you going to use this to best engage the students. So essentially, like I said, we're really trying to get them to move away from PowerPoint lectures. And actually there's a MOOC that we've just launched. It's called Sex in the Canvas, and it's about gender and art. And we're really proud that MOOC doesn't have a single PowerPoint presentation in it. So the academic in that MOOC shot 3 locations, one being at the National Gallery of Victoria, and then at MoMA in New York. She had some money to go and visit there, and while she was there she presented some content. So yes, we think it's terrific, and it's certainly the sort of thing that we're trying to encourage. This is another little snapshot that I used from that same paper, and it's again, when you're using video, what is it that you want the students to experience? And I think the answer that the academics most often give is building rapport and trying to establish an emotional connection, and video is a very a good way of doing that. But I don't think we take advantage of some of the other things that video allows, and demonstrating something or going out on a virtual field trip, and as we did at the Animal Behaviour MOOC, where the academic went out to Albert Park Lake and was talking about swans and actually looking at the swans in their environment and pointing out certain things. So it's much more powerful than just having text on a screen. And I think we've certainly seen a lot of papers recently on the power of digital storytelling and using imagery to, in narration, and how that can really engage students on a much higher level. The weekly mailbags are something that is, I think, quite, certainly for us, has been quite novel in the MOOCs. So one of the things, the overwhelming messages that has come from students is wanting to know about the other students in the MOOC, and you know, so where have they come from, and that wasn't information that we necessarily shared with them in some of the first MOOCs that we delivered. But we learned from that, and we've started to we now have a section in each of our courses that is a little bit of a profile of the academics teaching unit, but also a snapshot of the students that are enrolled. So, you know, where they've come from, how old they are, what their previous experience has been, etc. And that seems to be really popular. In the bottom left there is a picture of Paul Carter, who is the teaching assistant in the climate change MOOC, and he used the video mailbags to create a bit of a competition for the students. So each week he asked them to upload photographs and give examples of instances of climate change, or examples of climate change and the effects of climate change in the local area that they live in. And then each week he'd pick the top 3 and then share that in the mailbag, and that became this became a very, very popular activity for the students and really, really got them engaged. And then on the right-hand side is a shot of Peter McPhee sitting in an armchair in the library, I think it was filmed, and he's talking, you know, giving a bit of an overview again of what happened that week. But it was just a really lovely way of presenting it with the books in the background, and his very gentle way of speaking. Some people refer to it as the grandpa in the armchair type thing. They found it a really lovely way for him to just give a bit of a wrap-up of what had happened in the previous week and to talk about what was coming in the next week. And for Peter in particular, he wasn't highly active in the discussion forums, and he found it much easier to engage with the students in this way. And although it wasn't direct engagement, he was still able to pick out various comments that they'd posted in the forums and then feed that back to them via video in this mailbag format. I'll go on now to talk about the thing that we refer to as the MOOC Alumni. So alongside each of our MOOCs, we have set up a Facebook group. And some of the Facebook groups have grown to numbers, you know, much bigger than we ever imagined. So the snapshot I've got on screen at the moment is an example of our Assessment and Teaching 21st Century Skills MOOC. And you can see, I don't know if you can see it, but on my screen I can. We've got about 23,000 students enrolled in that Facebook group. Now that MOOC finished in May this year, and we still have, you know, this very active community online that are sharing resources and keeping each other up to date with the latest developments in this particular subject area. And we also have, you know, very high numbers in the climate change MOOC and epigenetics MOOC, which, you know, finished way back in March. So I guess we didn't really think about, you know, how much students would. You know, I think we made the assumption that once the MOOC was over, that the Facebook group would die as well, and they do to some degree. But you know, we still, you know, some of the groups in particular have very, very active participants who are posting in there every single day, and we can, you know, there are instances of when the MOOC is finished where the students said, "Oh, you know, we've just spent 8 weeks together and we've really grown. You know, it's just been great to meet these people online and be able to share with each other and talk to each other." And so we found that having a space for them to continue those conversations has been really beneficial. They are closed groups, so the members have to sign up or, you know, request to be a member of the group, and then we have several administrators who give them access. And we have noticed that spam has become an issue with some of the bigger groups, particularly Assessment and Teaching 21st Century groups that we've got on the screen here. So to deal with that, we've had to put some restrictions on what people can post, and so we now have, for this particular group, we now have a rule in place that each post has to be approved by an admin person before it can appear on the page, which does create a little bit of extra work for us. But like I said, there are several administrators, so we do tend to share them amongst a bigger group of people, so it's not, you know, not as onerous as you would imagine. The next slide is a snapshot of a live guide. So again, for some of the MOOCs, we've engaged with library staff to create an online resource for students that lists a whole bunch of things. So it can be, videos and books and access to databases and referencing tools and all sorts of things. And we've found that it's been a really useful way to, again, engage students post-MOOC, because this is a resource that they can have access to well after the MOOC has completed. So again, they're just kind of little things that we've developed to try and keep the students engaged, and I guess feeling like they're still part of the university. Sorry, I've just been ignoring the discussion group and see that we have some questions, but Peter seems to be on top of it. Thanks, Peter. The last bit is on assessments. Peter did mention a few things earlier. I think he talked about the importance of having answer explanations with the quizzes. In the early days when we had a quiz with just a yes/no response without really giving any reason why a student got it wrong, we noticed that they would become quite dejected in their posts in the Facebook forums and in the discussion forums, and being quite confused, and particularly if they thought that they knew the answer and when they got it wrong, and not understanding why they got it wrong. So we really try to encourage, again, the academics to don't just include a quiz, but provide answer explanations. The big thing we've learned as well is rubric design, and how important it is to keep rubric design really simple. Again, some of the earlier MOOCs we had 12 separate categories, and from 1 to 10, and the students found that incredibly confusing. And so, where possible, we try to make them really simple, using a Likert scale, and providing a lot of instructions around how to evaluate. And where possible, some of the lecturers are doing a little tutorial. So in the case of Peter McPhee, he created a little video tutorial before the first assessment was due, and had an example of how he would mark the assignment using the rubric, and students found that very useful. We've noticed that variety is important. So again, don't use an example of the French Revolution MOOC. That particular MOOC had written assessment only. It didn't include any quizzes, and the lecturer, Peter McPhee, was very adamant that as a humanities subject he didn't think that quizzes really lent itself to that subject area, and he just wanted to have some written essays with peer review as part of the assessment. And we found that students that came from non-English speaking backgrounds found that very difficult, and would have really appreciated having quizzes, just to, even if it was with 20% or 10%, just giving them a little bit more confidence before they tackled the first assessment activity. So in the second running of the MOOC, Peter has included quizzes and a mixture of written assessments as well. And we've also learned that having 2 assessment pieces of say 50% doesn't work very well either. Having lots of assessments, having it early, giving them a chance to get feedback and improve on that is the way to go. And Peter often refers to that as the low-hanging fruit. Did I miss anything there? Peer review as well. So again, some of our MOOCs only used 1 peer review, and we've noticed that students don't really like that, particularly if they feel like the review or the grade they've received isn't fair. So having more, 3 is a minimum, but 5 seems to be a good number. So I guess probably makes you have to consider having a shorter writing assignment. Asking them to review 5 assignments of 1,000 words probably doesn't work so well, but 5 assignments of 500 or shorter seems to work quite well. We've also been surprised by the number of students that have told us, just how useful they've found the peer review process, the process of reading other people's work and then going back and evaluating their own. And some students report marking 10+ papers. It's actually quite amazing. But it's been a wonderful learning exercise for us, and particularly for the academics involved. And we have seen, I think Peter mentioned earlier, that we've seen a real increase in the use of video for face-to-face teaching, particularly with the flipped classroom approach. And I think the same can be said for peer-to-peer review, and we've again seen a little bit of an increase in that, and certainly for the, some of the subjects that I'm working on for the graduate online program, some of the academics that are teaching in that have previously taught in a MOOC feel much more comfortable about using peer reviews and assessment activity. I wanted to finish up by talking about the really rich student feedback that we get from MOOCs that we wouldn't perhaps receive in face-to-face teaching. And we think that's because, well, the courses are free, and I guess the students aren't really worried about how some of their opinions would be perceived by the lecturer. There really isn't that kind of relationship there. So the students are very blunt and very, very open about how they feel about the assessments and even some of the video lectures. And if they think, if they think the lecture is boring, they'll say it. If they think that the videos are too long, they'll tell us that too. So it's, I think for some of the instructors, some of it's been quite confronting, but a lot of them have really appreciated it, and it's actually forced a lot of them to change. Again, not only the way that they teach online, but in the face-to-face setting as well. So I was hoping to share some of those quotes with you today, but unfortunately some of the students that I contacted never got back to me, so I didn't feel comfortable sharing their quotes. But I like this one, which was by Jeff Borland, who taught in the Generating Wealth of Nations MOOC, and he said at the end of it that he received more feedback about his teaching in 8 weeks of delivering his MOOCs than he has in 15 years of face-to-face teaching on campus. So we thought that was a really, really powerful statement, and for him it's been a very, very valuable exercise. Peter, did you want to take over the MOOCs in the future?
Look, I think we can probably throw it open. I mean, I think the nice thing is Susan and I both reiterated each other, reinforced each other on a few points. And I've kind of mentioned this, the university setting a goal of around 25 MOOCs at the moment. And yeah, but I suppose the collaboration and cooperation here with other institutions, and we purposefully left that statement with a comma because it's not yet written. So I think we'll leave it there. I suppose the main thing to me is that there's definitely more to MOOCs than meets the eye. And we don't have all the answers, but I tell you what, it's a heck of an exciting ride, and they're certainly challenging educational thinking at the university, and they've been very useful as a talking point to get people, as I think Travis mentioned this in his presentation to Blackboard last year and at the Blackboard conference, about using MOOCs as a Trojan horse to talk to face-to-face lecturers about their blended delivery, which Travis, you could put the URL for that up if you've got that. So anyway, I've had enough talking, and so how about somebody else grab the mic if you've got some questions, because I tell you what, I can talk faster than I can type. And the room goes quiet. Taking questions now. Okay, great question there from Jackie. Other lecturers given time off. Okay, the way the Melbourne model works at the moment, and remember that's always an inverted commas there. Up until now, they've been given a $35,000 grant, and we've estimated back of envelope calculation that our MOOCs cost around $70,000 to produce. So Learning Environments gives in kind the video production and the learning design advice to the tune of around $35,000. So we do give them sub-budget. They can have an on-site video session, at a local lake or a local park, but they can't have a field trip to Greece like some of the American universities have done for their MOOCs. So they have $35,000, $5,000 pays for their teaching assistant. The other $30,000 they can use to buy copyrighted material if they need it for the course, or use it to buy out some teaching time so they can devote to the MOOC. So you know, we don't audit their budget very strictly. As long as it's spent on the production of a beautiful MOOC, we're happy to let them have that. But no time off, yes. Okay, yeah, well, Caroline, definitely return on investment, but we don't always look at return on investment financially. But I'll give you some direction from that. One is, and what I'll do is maybe if you contact me afterwards, I can give you the URL. I haven't got it off the top of my head. I went to the Coursera conference in London 2 years ago, and one of the universities at that time, the university that did the dinosaur MOOC, they did a return on investment, and they worked it out financially based on the number of web page clicks that they got through the MOOC, going through from the MOOC into the university website as potential, you know, marketing for the university, and it did come out as over $200,000. That was on a per click basis, so I can definitely quote you that. If you just send me an email, I can put that up for you. But we're looking at it other ways. There's so much anecdotal evidence. I'll give you an example. Marnie Blewett, who ran the epigenetics MOOC, after the very first course, she supervises about 10 postgraduate students. She said, I could have filled my postgraduate places 4 times over with numbers of people who did the MOOC who wanted her then to be her supervisor. We have had people from China post, I love this course. When my son goes to university, I'm going to send him to the University of Melbourne so he can study under Nils Ollerkans. Now, whether that student, you know, whether that parent does send the student here or not, that's really good positive feedback. But at the moment, we've got a lot of anecdotal feedback from students, but nothing too formative. In saying that, our aging MOOC, Rethinking Aging, was designed as a bit of a pipeline into our postgraduate, graduate online, totally online masters, multidisciplinary masters in aging. And we did get 2 or 3 people who did the MOOC who then signed up for a full masters online. So I mean, we're hoping, you know, that's where some things are going. But you know, it's pretty exciting, yeah. Yeah, that'd be a good thing to